One might be tempted to describe Atomfall as proof that, in contrast to the 2010s, the 2020s are really starting to hit their stride with recognizing that less is often more in game design. But while this is an apt description, I don't think it quite captures Atomfall's strongest asset. Atomfall looks like it could be the British Fallout or the British Metro, but it also has a lot in common with games like The Sinking City. Sure, we can talk about how Atomfall has less than the games that it comps from. Its map is not nearly as big, its RPG elements are not nearly as dense, its combat is not nearly as varied, its quests are not nearly as sprawling, and we can talk about how these all play to its favor.
Addressing civilian. Stand back, citizen.
But what I would rather talk about is how confidently Atomfall comes in and does it all. Atomfall knows it's cooking, and it leans into the confidence that knowledge affords it in a number of ways. It is so confident, in fact, and has a right to be in some respects, that it pretty effectively papers over a lot of elements that felt stale in an otherwise fresh take. Atomfall is not a long game. I beat it in just over 16 hours while exploring every lead I found and searching the map for spots where it looked like there might be something I had missed. I rolled credits on 2 different endings by reloading a save, but there were at least 4 other ones I could have chosen to pursue, and only one of those was locked out through my actions in connection with another. Atomfall's story is simple but effective. I'll admit that Atomfall ends up using a narrative trope in a way that I personally dislike, and was disappointed with, which I won't reveal for obvious spoiler reasons. I am certain this won't bother everyone, and speaks much more to my taste than any flaw on the part of the writing. That said, you start to get a real sense of what is going on in Cumberland County pretty early. But it is in filling in the finer details that the game really works. And complementing it all is the game's approach to quests, which is to say the lack of anything labeled main or side quest. Instead, you have leads, with no obvious discernment between what is important or less so. Because they're all, ultimately, important. Atomfall does a remarkable job of leaving me feeling like there were no wasted leads to pursue. What seemed like a venture off the beaten path wrapped back around in interesting ways. This showcases the tightly packed world that Rebellion has created, where every element of the world is touched by the central events and are responding to them, such that nothing is superfluous and nothing feels like bloat. Of course, this doesn't always work flawlessly, and in the latter parts, as I was pursuing leads connected to multiple possible endings, I started to wonder why I couldn't bring up things I had learned to certain characters, or why other characters weren't interacting given their proximity and agendas. For how meticulously the world is populated with interconnected clues, information, motives, and characters, when something that should have been connected wasn't, it really stood out. The challenge that Atomfall offers in both combat and stealth is nothing to blink at. On the game's recommended difficulty, it was easy for even a small group of enemies to quickly overwhelm me and put me in the dirt. You are most certainly not a superhero in this game, and most of the time, running for your life is the best plan. But after I had fully invested in various weapons and combat perks and gathered a fair stockpile of ammo, I was able to take on some major fights later in the game. Meanwhile, stealth is an option, but even with upgrades, these guards and enemies did not come to play. These are not your Bethesda-style stealth mechanics. Enemies have detection bars that light up when they see you, and they will see you. Step a toe into their line of sight, and you'll have sometimes less than a second to react. They'll hear you coming too, even when crouched, unless you move agonizingly slow to avoid detection. You also can't hide bodies or reliably get headshots with the bow, your one silent weapon option. Normally, I go all in on stealth in these kinds of games, but by halfway through the game, I had completely thrown stealth out the window and just tried to press the advantage with guns early in the fight. It's also worth saying that the emphasis here is often on sight, and the guards still do have hilarious behavior. Sometimes I would kill a small group of guards with a grenade that people 2 rooms away would not react to in the slightest. Thankfully, the guns feel great, which is why it is a real shame that the inventory system in Atomfall is so frustrating. While I admire the choice to abandon the typical magic pants of other games and really limit how much your character can carry, there was more than one moment in the game where this proved incredibly annoying. Trading in the game doesn't use currency, but a true item-for-item barter system that makes a lot of sense in the world the characters are inhabiting, and you can store excess items in pneumatic tubes that are accessible at multiple locations across the map, but these locations are few and often far apart, and they're never conveniently near any traders you might want to exchange your accumulated goods with, in a way that is further exaggerated by the lack of any fast travel. And given that upgrading weapons requires carrying multiple copies in order to fuse them together through crafting to get more powerful versions, I found myself wishing there was a different way this had all been put together in the end. The last thing I'll say about the combat is how it connects to the game's progression and skill tree system. Skills are learned by finding books hidden throughout the world and upgraded using consumables that are also scattered throughout. By the end of the game, I had found every book and had acquired a fair amount of upgrade items that made me feel like I was definitely much improved over where I started in the early hours of the game. But from the beginning of the game, you don't know what the full range of perks and abilities are going to be. This makes planning ahead more difficult, and while I didn't have any major regrets by the time I rolled credits, it was frustrating at times to not know when or where I was going to unlock another set of skills I might be interested in while sitting on a healthy stack of upgrade items. Striding in with a confidence backed up by innovative spins on game design and gameplay approach, solving the mystery in Atomfall is a treat. With 16 solid hours to see the whole thing through, the game is a cleverly built mystery box, where you get to pursue and solve the leads and questions most pressing to you without ever needing to worry that you're losing sight of the game's bigger picture. Despite being bogged down by some clunky systems and elements, the game's brevity keeps anything irritating from becoming too stale, and genuinely tense combat and high margin for error stealth give real weight to your decisions when approaching any given situation. Like its various disparate leads, everything ends up coming together for Atomfall, and the shape it ends up taking isn't what you might have thought when you first took it in.
Atomfall.